Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.
Both been here too long. You can't go back to Ireland or Poland or England, and I can't go back to Africa. And we will live here together, or we'll die here together. And it's not I am telling you. Time is telling you. You will listen or you will perish.
You ever felt?
Are you listening?
Welcome back, everybody. Growing up, I constantly heard a very specific term used to describe a young girl who the adults felt was exhibiting behaviors too old for her age. I'm sure many of you have heard some young girl of 12 or 13, sometimes even younger, being referred to as fast or fast-tailed. If you're not familiar with this term, it alludes to a young girl who is perceived as sexually advanced for her age in one way or another. It does not always mean that she is engaging in sex. She might dress provocatively, be a little or a lot boy crazy. She might be very pretty and have caught the attention of the boys near her. This term is not just reserved for teen and preteen girls. A child as young as 6 or 7 can also be referred to in this manner. These are not the only markers of what can lead to a young girl being perceived as fast, but they are some of the most common. Now let's be honest. We in minority communities not only label our young girls, but we also have a tendency to unknowingly create safe spaces for the sexual predators in our family and our communities. For some reason, we very rarely will turn the offender in. Rather, we handle it in very toxic manners. Instead of holding the perpetrator responsible for their behavior, we seek to avoid further assaults by limiting the interactions between the minor and the perpetrator. This can be demonstrated in not leaving them alone in the same room, not letting the victim be babysat by the perpetrator, or stopping the child from going over to their house. Very often, we turn to the young girl and put the burden of control of the situation on her. Some of the ways we do this is by chastising the girl for what she wears, how she communicates with said individual, admonishing her for sitting too close, or acting fast in front of the abuser. So I say this emphatically. Yes, we are failing our young Black girls by making them responsible for the way adults perceive them on a regular basis, as well as victim blaming when they are sexually assaulted. There's no way around it. You can get as upset as you want. I can say as a young girl, being called fast and boy crazy and looked at by the neighborhood boys as easy simply for having boobs and not covering every inch of my body in the summer. It was devastating to my self-esteem and my sense of who I was in the eyes of my elders and my peers. This culminated in a local boy of 16 or 17 walking down the street yelling to everyone who could hear that I'd given him a hickey. Now, mind you, I have no clue at that age what that even was. Now, that couldn't have been further from the truth, but it was believed because I had already been branded by those around me with a scarlet F, simply for having short shorts, tops that showed my belly maybe, and thinking that boys were cute, as most 12 and 13-year-old girls would do. This incident and the labeling I received left a lasting impression upon me in regards to my culpability in any future sexual encounters or assaults. The thing about the way young Black women are seen as sexual beings even before they reach 18 is not new behavior. Instead, this is learned behavior that has been part of our psyche since the very first female slave was brought to this country. What a lot of people don't understand is the hypersexualization of young Black women and girls came from slave masters and those in power. The idea that young black female slaves as sexually mature individuals was normalized so that the sexual assault of these young women would assuage the guilt of the perpetrators for committing the acts. It was less deplorable when young girls were seen as mature women rather than the helpless children that they were. The problem is that it didn't stop with the end of slavery. This destructive myth was carried on throughout the decades. Here's a quote from a magazine article titled, "How Young Black Girls Were Hypersexualized in America and How That Enables Perpetrators." Black women were considered organically immoral, as one North Carolina legislator declared in 1931. It would take the United States Army to correct the morals of all the Negro girls. In response, respectability politics dictated that young black girls needed to behave like ladies, or effectively like white women. Black girls were stepped outside of the boundaries of acceptable ladylike behavior. Depending upon region and culture, were considered fast. We, as a culture, glommed onto this concept as we did many slave era ideals that were thrust upon us. Instead of combating it in our communities, we instead adopt it as fact. This is carried on to the modern day and how we still deal with predators in our community. Take how the black community divided itself over R. Kelly. We got our first taste of it in 2002 when he engaged in sexual relations with a then 14-year-old child. What he did was rape, but what a lot of people saw was a young woman who was fast and just as responsible for her deviance as the 35-year-old R. Kelly. We joked about it. There was even a Boondocks episode about it. A child was coerced into illegal sexual acts and assaulted by an adult. There's no way around that. Over time, we blew it off and continued to listen to his music. It wasn't until surviving R. Kelly did we once again discuss his predatory behavior. But that discussion split, and still does split, the black community down to very specific battle lines. Either the young women and girls are fast-tailed and responsible for what they went through, with R. Kelly just being what a man is, or, on the flip side, they are victims of a slick and well-versed predator with many years of sexually explicit conman abilities under his belt. Unfortunately, a lot of people who fall on the side of the women and girls as being responsible party are in fact other women. And it is heartbreaking considering that 60% of black females are sexually abused before they turn 18. With that kind of statistic, you would think we as women would be there for our vulnerable young women. But it is not always so. For every 15 black women that are raped, only one reports her assault. We hold young women responsible for the male gaze. We must stop calling them fast and treating them as if they are sexualized adults, that they are clearly not. When we do this, we tell them that they can't come to us because we have already decided that they are at fault for the abuse that they receive. We have to let go of a Eurocentric, slave-minded view of young black women as sexual beings from young ages and start treating these children and young women as what they are. Children and young women. The ideas that have been hammered into our community's psyche by white supremacy have to stop somewhere in order for the perceptions to change. And this one needs to stop in our community immediately. Only we can protect our young people. Let's not continue to fail these beautiful children by holding on to harmful ideals that were built on racism. Once again, thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Please tell me how you feel in the comment section. And most of all, remember, this fight is for all of us, not some of us. Thank you everybody for watching. Please come back and watch the second half, the abuse to prison pipeline. I will be discussing how the justice system disproportionately affects young Black girls and girls of color. So hopefully I see you tomorrow. Thanks.